Okay, do you see my aquarium? Do you see that yellow dot moving around? That is my new glowfish. So I have two that I just bought today. Right before making this video. There's a yellow one and there's a red one, but I feel like you can't see the red one from here. But anyway, I love that I can see the yellow one from here. Frolicking about. Oh, there it is. There's the red one. Oh, you see? Anyway, they're glowfish, so they're very bright. New additions to the family. So guys, I have a story, and it's a full circle moment kind of story. So I wanted to share it with you guys. If you've ever read the book, The Four Agreements, which I highly recommend, it's like a self-help, spiritual book, whatever. One of the themes in the book is to just like let go, not assume the worst about people, not jump to conclusions, and let people have their own like baggage, their own issues, and not assume the worst or assume that it has to do with you. So this story reminds me of that theme in that book. So a while back, I want to say like a year ago, I reached out to a guy on an app. He responded, he expressed interest back. He was like, "You're handsome." I'm only mentioning that because, you know, when somebody says that, you're like, oh, you're attracted to me as well. But he said that, and he was like, "We should meet for coffee sometime." I was like, "Yeah, sure, when are you free?" And then he disappeared, he ghosted. We never actually met, only exchanged a few messages back and forth, and then he disappeared, right? So I thought that was weird, right? Strike one. And then I wanna say like 2 weeks later, I saw him at this like gay rooftop event, like LGBT rooftop thing, in Miami. And I passed right by him and I was like, he looks so familiar. And I had had a few drinks. And so I just went for it. I was like, "Oh, hey, you're the guy we talked briefly." Sober, I'm not sure that I would have said something to him, right? Because you have that like self-consciousness of like, oh, that's the guy who I guess he wasn't interested enough to keep engaging. But I just kind of went for it. And I think he was surprised, like pleasantly surprised that somebody approached him that way, like that boldly or with confidence or whatever. So he was like, "Oh, I don't really remember." Strike two. Because I don't know, maybe my memory just works differently than people, but I never forget somebody that I talk to on an app if there's interest. Like, I don't know, it doesn't happen to me. And this was only a few weeks after, but he forgot, whatever, ego bruised, but I can move on. We start talking at this rooftop, and we had what I thought was a nice conversation for, I want to say like 20 minutes, just one-on-one. But as I'm talking to him, I could feel he was engaged in the conversation verbally, but in terms of body language, I could catch him like looking at other guys there. But in the moment, I'm like, well, maybe I'm just being, self-conscious or insecure. Like, when I talk to somebody, I'm always observing everything in the room myself. I mean, when I'm interested in somebody, I give them my focus because that's how I am. But I understand that sometimes you're just distracted. And then 20 minutes into, again, what felt like a very normal, enjoyable to me conversation, like it didn't feel forced or anything, he literally just walks away to go approach this guy, like 10 feet away. My first thought, because nothing abrupt, like nothing happened. I didn't say something offensive. There was no awkward silence. I thought it was like an old friend or something, and he just wanted to make sure he caught him before he left. So I'm awkwardly standing there, actually thinking he's gonna come back to like finish the conversation with me. And he never came back. And I was so embarrassed that I was just there by myself, standing awkwardly waiting for this guy who never came back, right? And I was so stunned by this, that somebody would treat another person that way. And when I experience something like that, it's so shocking to me that my first instinct is always like, did I do something? Like, do I have bad breath? Like, it's just such a bizarre way to behave that like I couldn't make sense of it, right? And so, I felt a little, I felt rejected, I felt self-conscious about it, whatever. Move on to the next thing, forget about this. And then fast forward to a few days ago, I'm out with my friend who's Egyptian. And this guy from that rooftop is also Egyptian. I was like, "You should set me up with somebody Egyptian." And she goes, "Well, I only know one Egyptian guy." And I'm just gonna make up a fake name. We're gonna say his name is Hassan. A nice Egyptian Muslim named Hassan. And my spidey senses tingle, and I'm like, wait. I know a gay Egyptian, Hassan, who lives in Miami. And I'm like, does he work in real estate? And she's like, yeah. And she shows me a picture and it's him, it's the guy. I go, oh my God, this guy is a fuck boy. Let me tell you this story. So I told her that story and she's like, wow, what a jerk. And she goes, but you know what? It's actually not that surprising because he's one of those like really broken, family-wise, broken family. Like the dad kind of like disowned him because he's gay. They don't have a relationship. And I don't really know him well, she said, but the girl who introduced me, they had a falling out. She doesn't really know him that well. It's like friend of a friend, but the mutual friend fell out with him and refuses to speak to him. And so she mentioned this. Now, we've all had falling outs. I've made videos about falling outs on this channel. But for me to fall out with somebody, I don't know about you guys, but when I fall out with somebody, like something has to really, really go wrong. Like for me to exile somebody from my life, they really have to screw up. Like I'm talking like they make me feel unsafe physically, or their behavior is like irrational, erratic, like or mean-spirited, right? So I went home that night thinking about it, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting how when you have a moment like that where somebody just rejects you in such a callous way, or, you know, like their behavior throws you off and you're like, did I do something? It's not you. It's not you. It's like that saying, it's not you, it's me. Or in this case, it's not me, it's him. It's you. But I was like, oh, for somebody to be disowned by their father and, you know, they burn through friendships, apparently. The guy is probably really broken or troubled. And how interesting that it's yet another story where I internalized that at the time and was like, what did I do wrong? Like, how did I attract that kind of reaction? And meanwhile, the guy's probably like totally in his own world and just, and you know what's funny? I mean, historically speaking, if we're going to talk about people who have daddy issues, right? If you don't have a relationship with your dad or mom or whatever, I could see how your eyes are always on the lookout for immediate gratification and validation, right? That's the stereotype. Of course, I'm totally generalizing, but I was like, oh, for all I know, again, nothing to do with me. So anyway, I wanted to share this story with you guys. And again, highly, highly recommend that book, The Four Agreements, because it talks about these kinds of situations where really the best approach is to have a more nuanced way of thinking and not come straight from a place of ego or insecurity or like, what did I do wrong, or how, you know, what does this say about me? So yeah, catch you next time.